No, you're not part of the mush. It was other things that I put in here today.
I don't want to be part of your mush.
No. Yeah. So
I'm recording, by the way, just so you know.
Great.
Not
I'm excited.
not because I have a clear sense of how that might be used, but just because you have books in the background and I have books in the background, so we must be smart guys who we know some stuff.
We know how to buy books.
I've memorized several words out of some of these books, so and I'm going to use them.
That's great. I think I've got a couple of books that I've memorized stuff out of. I have I have like 3 different versions of the Bible up here. I realize as I'm looking at myself there. This one is from my, I think my great grandmother or something. Yeah, these books right here were all handed down to me by grandparents. It's fascinating.
A version of the Bible that was translated by your great grandmother.
Right, that's it. Yeah.
This is what the Bible really means. Okay, wait, cut. Who are these guys and why are they talking about Bibles that have been given to them by their grandparents? Well, I'm one of the guys, so I just want to explain. Here's what you're watching right now. John Souza, doctor, has got a lot of these cool letters after his name, and me, Rick Lewis, no cool letters after my name, except I call myself a professional misbehavior, so that's a little bit cool. But anyway, we got this doctor and we have this juggler, street performer turned corporate speaker who are having a conversation together. And what the conversation is about is the fact that both of us need to make a big, huge pivot in our lives right now. The pandemic has turned both our careers upside down. Me as a speaker, events are non-existent. I haven't worked in 6 months and we don't know when that's coming back. And John lost his job in a developmental center that actually closed during the pandemic. So we are both in the midst of reinventing ourselves, and we are up against all sorts of fears, hesitations, doubts, and also excitement as we both attempt to make a big leap to doing something new. So that's what we're talking about. Last week, we came up with this idea, well, why don't we just support each other? And then we can invite other people into the conversation who need to do the same thing. So this is our first just kind of off the top of our head, off the cuff conversation about our plan to make this pivot. And so we just started recording, not knowing what we're going to do with it. And you're going to see now at the end, like all the graphics you saw at the beginning, well, that wasn't even a possibility at the start of this whole thing. We recorded the video and I had no clue where to go or how I'm going to, like spiff this video up so it looks professional. All that was after the filming of what you're going to be watching now. Figured out the graphics, put in some audio. The music at the beginning of the video is actually John's own music that he created, which we'll talk about in the video. So you'll get a little background on that. John he'll tell you what he's going to pivot, what he's pivoting from and to, and then I'll have my turn to share what I'm doing as well. So if you're in this position out there in the world, you got to make a big change of some sort in your life. There's so much uncertainty. There's so much instability. There's so much up in the air. Hey, we're all in the same boat. John and I are with you. We want to lead a conversation about how the heck do you do this right now? And we don't know, but we're going to figure it out maybe at the same time you do. We've got some background in personal and professional development. John is a therapist. Really, he's done therapy for like 15 years, so he'll be of help in here somehow, I'm sure. And I'm just a crazy guy who will try anything and has tried all sorts of crap in his life. So I can weigh in from my own perspective. So here we go. Back to our conversation. Just wanted to give you a little bit of background on what's going on here.
So I am currently a marriage and family therapist, and I've been doing that for 15 years. However, prior to that, I was a musician for maybe about as many years. And over the course of developing my professional career as a mental health professional, I lost the music in my life, and I really have experienced, I would say, the ill effects of that. And so it was over the past 6 years that I really started to dial more into the need to have that in my life, but more as a hobby. And then the pandemic happened, and the place I was working closed. So I found myself at home in a gig economy, wondering, well, what do I do now? And it was a real opportunity for me to just take a break and survey the landscape to see, well, what hills can I climb that I've been looking at for a while? And
Right.
getting back to being a musician was the thing. So that is where I am pivoting toward, is this, what feels like a mountain of creating a career as a musician online.
Cool. That's so exciting.
It's very exciting.
And
It's
now,
scary as hell.
okay, well, that's what I was just going to ask. So, what's scary about that? And I got to say, as to your sole support person, at this point, first thing that's got to go is that chair, because that is a therapist chair that you're sitting in right now.
What?
That is totally a therapist chair. I feel like I should be I should be telling you my problems right now.
Yes.
You're gonna
Tell
need
me all your
you're gonna
problems.
need a musician's chair. So, but anyway, what scares you about this?
Um, you know, today was a great time to ask me that question, because today is the first time that I prepared myself to share my music with people that I would consider real musicians. Like, I mean, I'm a real musician. I play pretty well. I've played for a long time, but I mean people who are actually creating original works and putting them out there and selling albums. So I connected with this group online of musicians who are supporting each other through Facebook, and this one lady in London and I just connected, and I said, hey, let's swap songs, and thinking that she was sort of at my level, like entry level, and she sends me her stuff, and she's like the real deal. I'm like, holy
Right,
crap, what have I
right,
gotten myself into?
right.
So I spent all morning uh, putting together, a couple of songs that I could put online and share with her, um, and to actually send that link to her was terrifying, because now it's going to be, it's like a opening myself up to its vulnerability, right? The
Totally.
definition of which is to make oneself open to being hurt.
Right.
So I'm open now.
Yeah. That seems to be the most notable aspect of doing, like, pivoting is not a big deal unless you're pivoting towards something you really care about, because exposing what you care about, what you want to be able to do, what you want to be known for, boy, is that just gut wrenching.
And what that means is that it means a lot to us. Like, it matters to me
Right.
that I can do this, that I
Right.
want to make this a big part of my identity and what I'm doing on a regular basis.
Right.
It has deep meaning for me. Um,
And so you really want it to go well.
I really want it to go well.
So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on balancing that investment? Like, obviously, wanting something to go well is a big factor in what makes things go well. But if the identification is too strong,
Mm.
And the sense of, if this doesn't work, I'm going to die is too intense. We're back to that, is it Yerkes Dodson curve, where they talk about,
Oh, right.
they talk about arousal. And if
Mm,
there's too much arousal, up to
yeah,
a point, arousal really serves performance, competence. If there's too much arousal or anxiety, goes over the top, and then you're diminished in your capacity.
exactly.
Do you have thoughts about balancing that degree of caring internally yourself, so that you actually can engage this without it being,
Mm.
no fun, because you're so stressed about it, or anxious, or wrapped up in
Right. Yeah. The, it's interesting that you would talk about what I would call eustress and distress.
it.
You know, that's that balance point where it's eustress or good stress up to that point, and then it goes into distress.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was managing that this morning, just being aware of that that sense of almost almost like a mania. Like I have to get this right, and I have to do it well, and it's got to happen. And if I don't, I don't know what. But what I found was stopping what I was doing. As that meant I was too close to the picture, so to speak. Like I couldn't see the forest for the trees, uh, and getting back down to just some mundane minutia. Like I made lunch for my daughter. I made breakfast for my wife. I took out the garbage. I exercised. Like I just did some real basic things,
Yeah.
and it really helped to just soothe my nervous system, so I
Right.
wasn't as
Right.
activated. Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty practical, that's a pretty boring answer, John, for
Yeah.
therapy.
Sorry. I mean, I could grab one of these books and give you
That's
something. It's probably pretty good.
that sounds way too like, yeah, well, duh. So
Well, okay, Mr. Lewis, let's flip the script a bit because you're doing a pivot too.
I'm trying to pivot. No, I find, joking aside, obviously I'm teasing you.
Yep.
Um, it's amazing to me how it's always the simple stuff
Mm.
that gets you forward. It's the simplest things. And for all the research and all the data and all the studies, um, just what you mentioned and things that are of that ilk, getting grounded in the body, being present in very simple ways, connecting with other people,
Yes.
taking care of yourself, taking a breath, stepping back, getting in the sun, drinking water, exercising. Um, I mean, that's like, it feels like 95, 98% of the game is the ability to unplug from the mental gears that get us locked into some form of distress, and just take a breath, take a break.
Yeah. Well said. It's that hamster wheel and it just spins, and just get off of it. It is such a simple move, but it's so effective. And I really want to highlight not just connecting with others, but being of service to others.
Mm-hmm.
That felt really important in terms of getting out of my own stuff,
Mm-hmm.
because especially, at least this has been my experience in pivoting as into musicianship, is there's all this development of myself, you know who am I going to be as a musician, and what's my music going to look like and sound like, and what genre am I in. There's a lot of me in there,
Right.
and I can even feel it almost like on a neurological level, just becoming more self-absorbed.
Huh.
I noticed my empathy going down a little bit, and really had to counteract that by being of service to others. Um,
I like that a lot.
uh,
That's really useful for me right now.
mhm.
So back to your question, my pivot
Yeah.
is from corporate association speaker, road warrior, go out there, be in front of audiences, make them laugh, do theater, present thought leadership, and inspire people to think differently, uh, be employed differently, manage differently. And that's over. That's been done now for 6 months. And there's no telling how much longer it's going to last. There's not the littlest blip on the screen in all the lead sources that I'm usually tuned to for gigs. There's nothing in the works. There's nothing coming in. So, as you know, for the last few months now, I've been fast tracking a kind of back burner plan to do an online course site where I would support people with confidence coaching through various forms of courses, and of course these games that I've been writing for a few years now, the games for confidence, and trying to figure out how that could be monetized so that I could serve and support people in their confidence growth pursuits and make a living at it at the same time. So I'm in the middle of that. And I was thinking about it the other day. I've been trying this. I've been kind of poking at this bear for like 5 years, going, oh, I'd really like to do this. But it's sort of been, just barely nudging it along while I go out and make a living as a speaker. Now I don't have that income, so I have to get this going. And I've spent more time, and I've spent a lot of money, frankly, on courses and systems and platforms. And I have yet not made a single dime of income off of online business. And I don't know why it scares me. I make really good money as a speaker. I'm not cheap. I don't have a problem with asking for that and charging that and collecting that in my bank account. And yet to ask someone to pay $10 or $40 for a course or a service makes me feel like, well, who am I to charge somebody for that? Why would they pay me money for this service? And intellectually, it's an easy, like, well, I do this all the time. I've been helping people for years. I get paid good money to inspire people, give them direction and guidance and inspiration for professional development. Absolutely. And yet doing it online, there's something about it that I'm stuck on. And so I've spent a lot of time writing stuff and perfecting things, and I'm building the website out now. And yet tell everybody about it so people can come and interact with it, that step remains still really scary for me.
Yeah. And do you have a sense of what it is specifically that fear is?
I was thinking about this too. I was also thinking about this today, and the phrases or the words that come up are like, who am I? Or who are you to be doing that? Feel like an imposter. I feel like it's not the real me, or people are going to know I don't really know what I'm doing, or they're going to say, how can you be charging for this? I mean, I've been giving the games away for free for a couple of years. And I've literally had subscribers tell me, I would pay you for this. I would sign up for this and pay you for this. And yet that, even though some people would pay, I don't want to hear from those people, even if it's one person out of 100 who says, I'm not paying you for that. Like, why would I pay you for that? There's something about hearing that. And I know I went through the same cycle when I was a speaker. When I first started marketing myself as a speaker, I was afraid to make cold calls, afraid to charge. And it was just exposure therapy. I just had to
Mm-hmm.
get in, and I started doing it. I started making the calls. I started with a lower price tag. I worked my way up, and it took years, but eventually it's like, yeah, of course I charge for being a speaker, and I charge a good amount of money, and
Yeah.
I'm worth that. And I know it, and
Right.
that gets reflected back. But I don't
Mm-hmm.
have that same confidence yet with the online thing. So just, I see myself just in the same cycle, whatever that is internally, that same voice that feels unqualified, not competent. Uh,
Yeah, at least until you were to have a few paid subscribers. Um,
yeah,
yeah, and then I'm sure you would sort of get that confidence and sort of this.
that's totally what it's going to take. But I have
Yeah,
to open the doors and invite people
right.
for
Yeah,
it to happen. So
it's this liminal space. We have to open ourselves up to external validation that can sort of jumpstart our own internal continuation of that confidence or validation that, okay, yeah, I am pretty good at this, or I've got something that people are interested in.
right.
Um, yeah, reminds me of, have you ever read any Parker Palmer? He's kind of he writes a lot about teaching, pedagogy.
No.
He wrote a book called The Courage to Teach. And he talks basically about, if I recall correctly, these two main issues that professors or teachers struggle with, particularly in the beginning of their career or throughout their career, I should say. Uh, in the beginning of your career, it's the sense of this imposter syndrome that you just described,
Mm-hmm.
because you haven't taught before. You're brand new. And so you can't claim any sort of real expertise or competence in teaching itself. You might have some content competence or knowledge, but, and I experienced it all the time as an instructor. When I first started teaching, I was like, I haven't read this book. I'm still learning this material, but I'm the one who has the degree, and I'm I'm going to be your teacher.
Right.
And I think I'm just like 1 or 2 weeks ahead of you in this book.
Right. Right.
But then the other thing that happens later in your career, as a teacher specifically, he talked about, but I think it applies here too, is you do develop a sense of competence and confidence. But what that tends to take away from, there's sort of this inverse relationship with authenticity, or this sense of approachability that your students can have with you. It's almost like the more qualified you are, the more confident you are in your ability to do something, the less you're able to connect with others around that, at least again in the teaching thing. So it's almost like
So
if
wait,
you're,
so what, I'm going to make sure I'm
yeah,
understanding what you're saying, because this is really interesting. So you're saying the lack of sense of competence disconnects you from others because you don't feel up to the task. And then,
no, the opposite, the lack of confidence, meaning the sense of vulnerability in your teaching, it allows you to connect better with your students. You can actually be more authentic with your students because you can say, I know what this is like for you. I know how hard this is.
and as you become more competent, there's more distance.
Yes.
Amazing.
Mhm.
I can see that. I can really see that.
So I think why it applies here is because teaching is a very vulnerable act too. It's, you really open yourself up to criticism from your students if you're doing it well. You have to show all the things that you know, or that you don't know potentially. You open yourself up to all kinds of questions and things like that.
Well, to broaden it, would this not apply to anyone who's serving others in any way, like
Yes. Yes.
teacher or not? If I'm feeling tentative about, what I'm offering, maybe people are seeing someone who's being a little more raw, a little more real.
Mhm.
And then if once, as I get really good at that and feel like, hey, yeah, I got this handle, and yeah,
Right.
people should be coming to me and paying me lots of money,
That's right.
then maybe, and I'm not of as much service. But
Mhm.
what I liked about what you said earlier that really is helpful for me is this thing about serving being the key having empathy for people and serving
Yeah.
is a real key. And just this, what we're doing, the reason it's easier for me to just do what we're doing and recording this with the thought of sharing it for people is I'm connected to a need out there that people are in our position right now. They need to make some kind of big shift, a big move, a transition, and they're scared about it. And I want to speak to those people. Like I want to go with them and I want them to come with me. And you and I together. I'm like, yeah, let's do this together because we're all in the same boat. Millions of people are in the same boat right now.
100%. Yeah.
And that does, I can feel right away that removes that kind of self-consciousness that focus I've got on myself about, oh, how do I look doing this? And is this coming out okay? And, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a real pressure to be competent, and it's what if we were competently not competent? What if we were competently, as Parker Palmer says, muddling our way through, and that's pretty good. You know, that's how we do a lot of things, is we muddle our way through, and of course we pause for reflection to see where we went and if there are any changes we want to make. But I remember a quote, not a quote, it was at an awards ceremony, probably 15 years ago, the beginning of my therapy career. And I saw this hypnotherapist that I really admired. I had just taken a course of his and he was super skilled and he was receiving this award for his accomplishments. And
everyone fell asleep.
And everyone fell asleep.
I didn't know how it happened. It was just like amazing.
It was so incredible. But he said something that I referred to over and over and over again. His acceptance speech was very simple. He said, "Thank you for not expecting me to be the finished product in the beginning."
Wow. That's very cool.
Yeah. John Sowada, I think that was his name. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I like that a lot. Phew.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's make that our like motto or slogan. Like, if this is going to be Journey to Confidence, this is the place where you don't have to be the finished product in the beginning. This is where it's raw, it's ragged, and you're going to mess it up and it's not gonna look the best, and you're gonna stumble your way into that mastery. If not mastery, then at least practical functionality. So you can actually do the thing you've been dreaming about doing. Be a musician, make a living. Like for me, it's making a living as a writer. And I have to remember to frame it that way, because when I say I want to make a living as an online website owner or course creator, that's different than saying I want to make a living as a writer, because I love finding the right language to bring to life the right distinctions and the right motivation that helps people to move forward in their lives. And language to me is it's thrilling to me to work with concepts and ideas and present them in a way that's going to be useful to other people. Yeah. And if I could make a living doing that, oh man, that would just be so cool.
Yeah.
I would love to do that.
Yeah. Well, and there's no reason that you won't, except for maybe you not stepping into those scary spaces consistently.
And here's another piece of my fears. My whole life, I've made a living being in front of people and presenting, doing the same thing, communicating, inspiring, raising people's spirits, but it's face to face. And so even now, looking at you, I'm getting something back, and I can measure and gauge, okay, that's working, or that wasn't received. Or as a writer, you're sitting alone, you diving into these ideas and these passionate ways of framing things, and then you write it and you finish it and you put it out, meaning up online somewhere, and then nothing happens. And you don't know if that nothing that happens is people are so impacted by it, they're just getting huge value out of it and they're just digesting it and they're like, I'm so glad I read that article, or oh, that was boring, or that didn't help me at all, or I couldn't care less. And so it's much harder. Being a writer, it's so much more difficult to gauge unless people are actually giving you, making comments and sending you feedback, which is a very tiny percentage of those that who are reading your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's one thing that really triggers an avoidance response in me. I don't want to do that because the idea of being judged from behind a veil, people who are having judgments or criticisms about what I've done, and I'm not hearing about it. I don't get a chance to correct. I don't get a chance to make it okay or show that I could do it different. Yeah. And people are just, they just get to have their opinions about me invisibly from some distant spot, and I can't interact with that. That's
right.
Really, I just don't like it.
Yeah, right, for sure. And it occurs to me as I'm learning more about what it means to be an online musician versus an in-person on stage musician, because we have some parallels here with, you're speaking live and me performing, that the way that we solicit feedback is very different online than in person.
Right.
There's actually more effort required on our part to get that feedback online.
Yes.
Whereas if I'm at a bar playing, people walk in and say, "Yeah, that was great, man." Like, right. "Yeah, thanks, bro." But it's the territory is so much more vast online that it is like just we're like this needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
And so we really have to work hard, I'm learning, to be seen, to be noticed. We don't have to be the best, not the most talented, not the most gifted, all those things. We just have to be better at getting noticed.
And from everything I've seen and the experience I've had thus far, it's just a numbers game. That getting noticed is, you just have to put it out there, and you have to be willing to see that 1% or 0.5% or 2% of those you've asked to come have a look are going to come, and the rest you're not going to get. And that's par for the course.
Right. Yeah. And so it might be that focusing on a market, your niche. You have a niche with your leadership.
Really? Oh, a niche. I thought you said.
Oh, yes. I wish I could be half as funny as you, Rick. You are such a natural goofball. I love it. Oh,
just have to totally shave it, then it naturally occurs.
Oh, man.
You can't take yourself seriously when you got nothing
right
up here.
Well, I was going for the just like Harry Sasquatch thing that might help, but yeah, man. So that's like marketing 101 then, and you know a lot about that. I know you've been working really hard on that.
I know a lot. I've spent so much time, a lot of time studying this stuff. And now's the time I've got to put it into play. I need to take the risk, take the action, which is the hard part. It's easy for me to spend hours and hours and just amass the knowledge, but actually taking the steps. I was listening to, have you heard of a guy named Andrew Huberman? A neuroscientist, a Stanford neuroscientist. I'm surprised you don't personally know the guy, because for everyone who's listening, I get really inspired by people that I find out there. And then I come to John and I go, I just saw this material on this guy. And John's like, oh yeah, I know him. I'm good buddies with him. We hot tub together. No, but so this guy, so you don't know him, but so I discovered him first. Andrew Huberman, fantastic, a podcast it's called the Rich Roll Podcast. Some guy named Rich Roll, I guess.
Nice.
He's an athlete and a performance kind of guy, and he's got this podcast where he's interviewing Andrew Huberman. But what it all boiled down to is the guy's just saying he's got a lot of great data about the brain and the way it works, but his basic thing was behavior first. Thinking follows behavior, attitude follows behavior, mood follows behavior. Behavior first.
Interesting.
That the act, going through the motions and taking the actions, is what signals to everything else, the brain, the intellectual capacity. I'm paraphrasing how he was saying it, but that's what he's saying. That's how it works. Behavior first.
I like
so
it.
that's the stage I'm at, and I've got most of the site built out. I've written all this stuff. I just gotta go, okay, here it is. This costs $3. You want it? Pay for it.
Hey, forget about it. It's $3. Come on.
$3. Come on, $3.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to charge more than $3, but still, it's a bargain at what I'm on.
It is a bargain. It's a bargain. So yeah. So this parallel that I'm having this morning, going back to this musician I was telling you that I interacted with on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I scrambled and basically created my own account online, like a semi-professional account.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done it because I was getting caught up on what should my artist name be, but I said, forget it. I'm just going to be me. So I just used my own name, and I put out this little 3-song extended play album, and I put it out there, and so now people can go on there and buy it, and they can pay $1 for one of my songs.
Awesome. All right, send me the link. I'll do it.
I'll send you the link.
You have a buyer yet?
I haven't had anybody buy anything.
Okay, I'm your first buyer. Send me the link.
Listen first before you buy. But the idea is the next action step, because that was somewhat difficult. It took me a long time to have the courage to do, and I've been doing a lot of mixing and listening. Like, I've been spending hours in front of my computer mixing and listening to stuff.
Right.
The next vulnerable step, because it feels like it's sort of it's a ratcheting effect. You do one thing that's vulnerable, and now that's not as vulnerable. So now you got to take it to the next level.
Right.
The next step is to send it to people. Just say, okay, this is me officially claiming something, staking out some territory, and opening myself up to you saying, well, that's not much. That's not very nice.
Right.
You should probably not do that anymore.
Right. Oh, ouch.
But it almost, what you described earlier about not getting feedback, I wonder if that might be worse, because then
it is for me.
Yeah.
The
because then we will fill the
thing.
space with all the worst possible scenarios.
I can say much worse things to myself in my imagination than you could say to me directly.
Right. Yeah.
And I will, and I do, in the absence of actual feedback and input.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. So say we're winding down. Say if these are going to be 1-hour conversations.
Yep.
We're now, got 15 minutes left. So I want to ask you about four concepts that it seemed to me are relevant to those in our position. And I want you to just give me a riff on your take on this. So first word is focus. What role does focus play in this kind of transition time?
Mm. What comes to my mind is making a decision to do something. It's deciding to focus on something that is important to you, that you maybe haven't claimed something.
Okay, well, so pause there, because let me
Yep.
flip it around. I'm going to give you the second word
Okay.
first, because it applies, and I realized I gave them out of order. So the first one would be
Okay.
intention.
Attention.
Intention.
Intention. Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Because
What I
that,
just said, apply it there. Yes.
so, okay, do you have more to say about intention?
No, that's it. It's making a decision to move in a direction. It's
Okay.
claiming something.
So how would you language what you've claimed as an example?
Uh, claiming, it's almost like a reclaiming,
Hmm.
that something that is very much a part of me and my sense of my being
Hmm.
has been disavowed for a very long time.
Wow.
And I'm in a position, I'm very grateful that I'm in a position where I can reclaim that now. There's literally nothing keeping me from doing that right now, other than myself and my fear.
Well, is that ever different for anybody? Like, are there people in a position where you would say, oh, yeah, I can see this and this and this are stopping you? What's stopping anyone at any time, under any circumstance, from reclaiming something that is essential to who they are?
It's a great question. My first thought comes to sort of like racial prejudice, uh, ethnic prejudice, socioeconomic issues, uh, limitations that could be imposed on someone that really they have very little influence over. Um, so I'm trying to speak with some humility that I don't know all of those experiences. I only know
Okay.
my experience as a male of European descent, cisgender, uh, uh, you know, straight white guy
Whew.
who middle to middle socioeconomic status.
We've just entered some very deep water really quick.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to, like, I'm finding myself like going, whoa, okay, I got to be really pay attention here, because I know I'm blind to just what you're talking about. I know I don't have the kind of breadth of perception of other people and their circumstances being in the same category as you've described. And at the same time, I want to argue or champion the fact that reclaiming is always possible. Now, you might not be able to make a living at it. Like you're saying, like I've made a living as a speaker. Part of the reason I've been successful is because I'm a white male. That has
Mm-hmm.
helped me in that particular career. And I'm
Sure.
aware of that. But anyone who feels intrinsically called to something, a craft or a form of service, it seems to me it's so deeply rare that they cannot move in that direction in some way. They might not get, they might not make a living from it. They might not get famous by it. They might not get accolades and awards. They might, but what I'm thinking of is Eddie Hillesum. Do you know who she is? Eddie Hillesum? She wrote a book called An Interrupted Life.
Mm.
She was a Nazi concentration camp uh,
Survivor or
prisoner,
prisoner? Okay.
and survivor. And she kept a journal
Mm.
the whole time about what was going on, what it was like inside,
Mm.
the arc of herself and the people she was with and those who lost hope and died, and those who, and all she did was practice principles. She continued to say, this is who I am. I'm a generous person. I'm a kind person. I'm a person who has faith. And she wrote about it. She acted on it in the face of immensely horrific conditions.
Absolutely.
And treatment.
Right.
No food, terrible conditions for sleeping and, living. And yet she wrote this journal, which is now, it's called An Interrupted Life. You can read it, and you read it and you go, holy freaking, like, if I ever had a complaint in my life,
right,
I retract it.
Yeah.
And you look at someone with that kind of resolve to not disavow who they essentially are, and to hold on to it. These are extraordinary examples. That's an extraordinary person. And you hear of, people like this from time to time. I've never been, so far I haven't seen something of that degree of resolve to stick to my values and principles. And, I get a cold and I'm bitching and complaining at my family about it. So it's super inspiring, but I aspire to this idea that it is always possible, no matter who you are, what situation you're in, to do what you're describing, to have the intention to reclaim something that is essential to who I am. And being a communicator and someone who inspires others with concepts and actions and stories and love stories. That's essential. There's something essential about who I am in that. And I need to put that out. That's just, I have to do that.
Yeah. I'm so glad you shared that. That's, the book I've read by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, is sort of a parallel with Life Interrupted. There's that same idea of, even through all of that life-threatening adversity for years, still coming through it relatively intact and reclaiming self and work and what's important to you after the fact. So I just want to hold the space for those that can be in that mindset, to be able to feel that, to believe that, and those who might not be there, who don't see that that's possible, that if that helps them to move forward, to reclaim something, to feel that there are obstacles in their lives that keep them oppressed or suppressed, if that helps you to reclaim something, then I want to honor that. I want to hold the both and of that. As I've been doing a lot of work recently with white caucus groups talking about power and privilege and oppression and all those things, there are a lot of people who are really angry and don't feel that what you just described applies to them. And to try to counter that would be almost counterproductive to moving the conversation forward. It's like, it has to be acknowledged that that's where you are. So that's where, as we think about how do we as white guys share our experiences of pivoting here, hold the both and, I just want to honor that.
Well, thank God half of us have empathy and compassion. Because, oh man. Anyway, I appreciate that perspective and you bringing it. And I'm really glad that you're able to, I can feel it from you. And I get on this sort of crusader sort of energy. I'm like, come on, nothing's holding you back. You can do it.
Let me tell you something. Deepa said something yesterday that blew my mind. As she was on one of these calls, these sort of white supremacist calls, but with BIPOC folks, the Black, Indigenous, people of color. no European descendants there. And she said, all of them were really sort of complaining about white people, and they were going to make these demands of white people. And I challenged them. I said, how are you going to demand something from people that don't have anything to offer you? They're lacking culture. That's why they're appropriating everything. Why don't you instead have compassion for them and help them find their culture?
Wow.
Hey, okay. So she would totally agree with what you're saying, that there's really, it's only the self and your relationships that you rely on those things, and you can move through anything.
Well, so I think we're talking about, if we're offering help to people, the help is the invitation for people to internally have a relationship, both to self-forgiveness, self-empathy, a lot of space for oneself, as well as the willingness to take inventory and actually really look at and call out the excuse making and the victim positioning that we're all prone to doing.
Yes.
And you've got to do both. Because if you're not willing to hold yourself accountable to the excuse-making parts of oneself that are just going to say, oh yeah, I couldn't because, and blah, 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 then that part is going to eat you alive day after day, and you'll never move forward. And at the same time, if you're being too harsh and you're like being military sergeant with yourself,
right,
then you lose the heartfulness of your pursuit, the thing you want to connect to, because it's a feminine mode to enter that vulnerable space where you're willing to really be the thing, to animate and be the character who feels so passionate about something. That can be stamped out by the crusader. At least that's my own experience, because I know that part of me.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I like your languaging around that. It makes me think of family dynamics, parents and children, judgmental parents, and petulant kids, or kids that just acquiesce because they're shamed. So now we're talking a little bit about shame that can come up for us, and self-imposed shame that can stamp out that creative energy, or that results in us disavowing the things that we're now talking about we can reclaim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So going back to this word intention, are we saying the intention then, the role of intention is to reclaim something that is essentially a part of who we are, that we have disconnected from because we felt it was not appropriate, or wouldn't be accepted, or would be judged, or wasn't practical,
or as we were just talking about, we felt our circumstances wouldn't permit it. We felt like a victim, or we felt oppressed.
Right. So the intention phase or step of this pivoting is to kind of self-examine, is there a part of me I've left behind? And if I'm at a point where I know I need to transition, the question to myself is there anything I've left behind, and do I want to bring it along? Do I want to use this opportunity now that I'm shifting to bring this part along, or am I going to continue to leave it over there, which might be a conscious choice for whatever reason. I don't know why someone would think to do that, but I have to accept that maybe that's a reasonable conclusion to come to. Right. It could be a choice. Okay, I know I've got this part, but I'm transitioning and it's going to stay over there, or do I want to bring it along?
Yeah. And I would like that you brought up the fact that people might choose to just continue to have it be dragged along as opposed to reclaiming it. Yeah, we don't know what circumstances a person might be in that wouldn't allow them or make them feel like they could at that time.
Yeah.
But if they could at least identify the part, that's a step in the right direction.
For sure. You know, I think I've been through periods of my life, and I think this happens for people. You know, we put something that feels so precious, part of our, almost sacred, part of us that's very private, and you know, we might even call it a spiritual aspect. And we may be aware of the fact that, you know, I'm just not ready to, I have it, I know it's there, and I'm giving it, you know, I turn and I look at it every once in a while, but it's over here, it's put away, it's in safety. I'm not ready to bring it out, or I just don't feel like it's the right time to bring it out. And the more I think about it, the more I think that's a legitimate human capacity. Like sometimes you just might not be ready to share that innermost, whatever it is, perspective or passion or love.
Absolutely. And I would think, as we conclude today's meeting, this idea of intention and at least identifying the thing that you might reclaim would be a great takeaway from this.
Yeah.
What are the things, if you haven't already reclaimed them, start identifying what are those things that you might consider reclaiming.
Yeah.
So being a writer, being a musician, these are important things.
Yeah.
And we're reclaiming them.
Yeah. Okay, so, well, wait a minute. Other people other than me might want to buy your music. So where do we go? What's the link? Or where, can you tell us?
What is the link? Well, yeah, I just created it, so I'm going to have to look it up here. I think it's John Souza, John Souza Jr. .bandcamp.com.
Okay, wait, say that again. So it's, I missed something.
I'll put it, it's in the chat.
Oh, there you go. jr.bandcamp.com.
Oh, nope, that's not complete. It didn't come all the way through. This is so funny. Here it is, being vulnerable.
Beingvulnerable.com. John Souza Jr. .bandcamp.com. Cool. Okay. I got to make sure. I'm going to be your first guy. And then once we post this, you might get more. And I guess, okay, I'm going to share the...
Yeah, your website, your brand new flagship website.
And it's not ready yet. And people are going to look at it and they're going to go, what do you mean this isn't ready? This is, because I do have some courses up there. There's a free trial course that, did that show up in the chat?
Did, yep.
Okay, gamesforconfidence.com. There's a free trial course. There's 2 paid courses, so you can actually pay. They're really good, I think.
They're great. They are. I tell everybody to go there. They're so good.
But so there you go. Okay, we both exposed ourselves.
Yeah. Hey, I just want to give you a shout out to the game that you sent out recently was, or at least one that I saw was Buy a Ticket.
Yes.
And so I bought, my birthday is on Saturday. My 45th birthday is on Saturday. So I bought tickets to go to the movies because the movies have been shut down for months.
Yeah.
We're going to go with our masks and our hand sanitizer. But darn it, I wanted to go to the movies on my birthday.
Awesome. Well, happy birthday a few days early, but I'll ding you on that day as well.
Thanks.
Cool. I'm so glad you did that. That's a fun one. I like that game a lot.
Yeah, that's a good one. For sure.
Okay. So we'll see. Well, you and I will have to talk about what we do with this, but if anyone's watching it now, you'll know we decided just to share it somewhere, whether it's YouTube or LinkedIn or.
Yeah.
I've done a bunch of research this week trying to figure out how we might do these broadcasts, and the tech. That's actually question number 4. That's word number 4 is technology. How do you use technology and not get eaten up by it in the course of your pivot, which, because right now, most people who are pivoting to something, and technology is going to be part of the package.
Huge. Oh, yeah.
So it's a big question. But anyway, I'm trying to navigate that without completely going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. Look forward to talking about it. All right, my friend.
Till next time.
Give my best to the family.
Okay, you too. Happy birthday.